Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin.
Long before calendars carved time into neat little boxes, before watches blinked numbers and clocks ticked away our days, there was Saturn. Out in the cold quiet beyond Jupiter, Saturn spun slowly in the dark, dressed in a robe of rings, icy threads suspended like dreams around its golden belly. These rings do not make sound, but they tell time. They do not shine on their own, but they shimmer like memories when light finds them. And though they stretch wide and thin like whispers, each one holds the story of a season, a storm, a shattered moon. Saturn's rings are not solid bands. They are made of billions of particles, some no larger than grains of sand, others as big as mountains. Each piece dances in orbit, held not by strings, but by the gentle and invisible pull of gravity. Scientists believe these rings may be young, only 100 million years old, or perhaps ancient, older than the trees on Earth, older than bones, older than memory. When sunlight hits them just right, they glow like frozen time, as if the universe paused once just to admire them. Imagine standing on one of Saturn's smaller moons, like Daphnis or Pan, nestled inside the gaps of the rings. From there, the sky above would be an endless curving curtain of light and shadow, shimmering in silence. You might feel the hum of nothingness around you, the soft push and pull of gravity brushing your skin like a breeze you can't see. Saturn would hang above you like a god dreaming in stillness, surrounded by the rings it can never touch. These rings are not just beautiful, they record moments. Like tree rings tell of floods and fires, Saturn's rings hold traces of comets that came too close, moons that cracked apart, particles that collided and clung. In some places, the rings are clean and bright, fresh snowfall frozen in space. In others, they are dusty, clumped with ancient soot, perhaps remnants of long-forgotten battles between rocks and time. Sometimes, little shepherd moons move along the rings, shaping their edges, carving out clearings, creating waves like fingers brushing over water. These moons are tiny sculptors in the silence, unseen hands guiding the lines of Saturn's spinning diary. Each orbit they make is a sentence in that celestial journal. Each wobble, each ripple, a letter etched into gravity itself. To the human eye from Earth, the rings look still. But if you could watch them over thousands of years, you'd see them breathe. Gaps open, patterns shift, new lines emerge. Like wrinkles on a face, the rings age. And through these gentle shifts, scientists read the history of Saturn's neighborhood, who lived, who vanished, what passed by unseen. Back on Earth, we use clocks, calendars, and computers to know when we are. But Saturn's rings offer a different kind of timekeeping. It is slow, silent, patient, the kind of time that does not chase us but simply waits, the kind of time that doesn't forget. And maybe that's why we feel so drawn to them. They remind us of something deeper than minutes or hours, something more like memory or rhythm or breath. In the deep chill where sunlight barely reaches, Saturn spins on, and around it the rings whisper, always whispering, not in words but in weight, in motion, in light. They tell us time is not just something you count, it is something you carry, something that circles you, something that changes you even when you don't notice. So next time you look at a picture of Saturn or gaze up at a night sky wondering what's out there, remember that far beyond our blue world, there are rings counting years not with numbers but with snowflakes and stardust. And though they never speak, they are always telling a story about time, memory, and the quiet beauty of things that last. Let's drift deeper now into the quiet space between Saturn's rings, where time folds and unfolds like a breath held in the cold. The rings are not just ornaments circling a distant planet. They are chapters in a book still being written, each page made of ancient ice and dust. And like all true stories, their meaning grows the longer we listen. The rings did not appear from nothing. Some believe they were born from violence, a moon too close, pulled apart by Saturn's grip, torn into fragments that spread like feathers in orbit. Others think they are the frozen leftovers of Saturn's creation, bits of matter that never came together to form a moon. In either case, they are remnants, pieces of a whole that no longer exists yet continues to speak. When we look at Saturn's rings, we are looking at a wound that never healed but turned beautiful. Each ring has a name, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like musical notes or whispered letters in a forgotten alphabet. The gaps between them, too, are named Cassini division and Ke gap, Keeler gap. These separations are not empty. They are alive with motion, ripples, and wavelets created by hidden moons or the subtle play of gravity. Nothing in Saturn's ring system is truly still. Even the quietest part is humming. Scientists have noticed that the rings are disappearing, little by little. Rain, made of particles, is falling into Saturn's atmosphere, an invisible drizzle of ring material slipping away. It happens slowly, like sand through an hourglass. In a few 100 million years, the rings may be gone, just a memory. This slow fading makes them more precious. They are not forever, but then again, neither are we. And yet, in their fleeting nature, they mirror us. Just as we age and change and dissolve back into the earth, the rings evolve, thin out, vanish. What remains is what they touched, shaped, moved. Their influence lingers in the space around them, in the orbits they altered, in the moons they guided. It's a reminder that lasting beauty doesn't have to be eternal, it only needs to be real. On some of Saturn's moons, like Enceladus, plumes of icy water burst into space from under the surface, feeding the E-ring with misty breath. These geysers are powered by tidal forces, Saturn pulling and squeezing the moon until it warms and cracks. So the rings are not isolated, they are part of a system, a family. The planet, the moons, the rings, they all speak to one another in gravity's language. This interconnectedness is one of the most delicate truths in science. Every moon, no matter how small, matters. Every orbit shapes something else. The moons herd the rings shield the moons. The planet stirs them both. It's not unlike the way people shape each other's lives in quiet ways. A glance, a gesture, a presence, all changing the course of another without a word. Saturn's system is a symphony, not of sound, but of subtle forces and invisible bonds. Far from Earth, we send our machines to listen. The Cassini spacecraft spent 13 years studying Saturn and its rings. It flew through gaps, skimmed the outer edges, captured images that shimmer like dreams. Near the end of its mission, Cassini dove between Saturn and its innermost ring, a dangerous, narrow place no spacecraft had gone before. It moved with care, like a feather floating through a storm, and in those final orbits it showed us things no eye had ever seen. Through Cassini's lens, we saw the shadows of the rings fall across the planet, like lace on skin. We watched as storms bloomed and faded on Saturn's surface, their shapes stretching like ghostly dragons across the clouds. We witnessed the rings from the side, from beneath, from within. Cassini taught us that even silence can be full of meaning. And when Cassini's time ended, it fell into Saturn as planned, becoming part of the planet it studied. It burned up in the atmosphere, a silent farewell, becoming stardust in the place it loved. Even in death, it respected Saturn's story, refusing to crash into the moons that might harbor life. That gentle goodbye was not just a scientific act, it was a gesture of reverence. There's something profound about how much we care for these distant things. We name the moons, we count the particles, we worry about the loss of a ring. It's not just data, it's emotion. A sense that these things, though far away, belong to us too. That in studying Saturn's rings, we are studying something inside ourselves, the parts that orbit, that hold on, that eventually let go. If you imagine Saturn as a great clock in the sky, then the rings are its hands, sweeping slowly across time. Each orbit, each ripple, each division tells us something about what came before. They are a memory machine, a place where the past still moves, where history doesn't sit still but spins. The science of it is beautiful, but so is the poetry, because Saturn's rings aren't just about rock and ice. They are about the way time touches everything, the way distance can still feel close, the way silence can sing if you know how to listen. Now imagine the final turn of Saturn's silent page, the gentle end of a long and drifting thought. The rings continue their slow spinning above the clouds, bright and delicate, but we know they are changing. This section of the story is not a goodbye, but a soft closing of the eyes, a breath drawn inward to feel the fullness of time. Because Saturn's rings are more than a marvel, they are a lesson in how to witness. In the deep black where sound cannot travel and no wind can stir, the rings still create motion. Not just in matter, but in minds. They stir the imagination, they invite wonder. And perhaps that is why we sent Cassini there, not just to study, but to feel. In its descent, Cassini gave us one final gift, a look at Saturn from within its rings. The view was quiet, golden, and vast, and in that moment we were no longer strangers to Saturn. We had been close enough to understand. Somewhere within those countless icy pieces circling the planet, there are patterns that defy simplicity. Spiral waves ripple outward like fingerprints on glass. Braided ringlets twist like woven hair. Shadows move as if drawn by invisib. Le artists, these are not mere visuals. They are messages, signals of rhythm and force, of collisions and care. Nature did not need an audience to create this beauty, but now that we've seen it, we carry it in us, like starlight tucked behind the ribs. Saturn itself has no surface you can stand on. It is gas, spinning so fast it flattens at the poles, its clouds forever in motion. Yet the rings offer a kind of boundary, not solid but visible, not permanent but powerful. They show where Saturn's influence reaches and where it fades into space. That line between planet and not planet is where stories are made, where a moon might form or a storm might begin or a dream might settle. And as we listen more closely, we discover the rings are not silent after all. Radio waves from Saturn's interior pulse outward, and the particles in the rings respond. They align, they ripple, they sway to the beat of the planet's magnetic song. In this way, Saturn and its rings are forever in duet, one shaping the other in a cosmic choreography. It is like breath and heartbeat moving together. One creates, the other reflects. In classrooms on Earth, children trace the outlines of Saturn's rings with pencil and paper. They color them gold or white or pale blue. They do not know that what they are drawing is temporary, but maybe that's the beauty. Maybe what makes the rings precious is that they will not last, that we get to see them now in our lifetime at the height of their glow. We are witnesses to a rare season in the life of the universe. And what are we to do with that knowledge? Perhaps nothing more than to marvel, to feel small in the face of it and yet connected, because Saturn's rings, for all their distance, have entered our stories. They are stitched into bedtime tales and paintings, songs and science books. They belong to us now, not in ownership, but in memory. When the rings do fade, their particles will rain down gently into Saturn, pulled home by the planet's gravity. They will become part of the clouds, part of the storms, part of the swirling bands that never stop moving. In this way, the rings do not end. They transform. They become part of what they once encircled, as if the planet is finally gathering its thoughts back into itself. And we will remember them, not just in data or photos, but in the way they made us feel, quiet, amazed, softened by distance. The way they reminded us that not all beauty is loud, that not all endings are sudden. Some come slowly like dusk, some leave traces long after they are gone. So tonight, if you find yourself under a sky clear enough to see Saturn, a tiny golden dot against the velvet dark, pause, take a breath. Imagine the rings, wide and glowing, circling in silence. Know that you are alive during their time, that you are part of the moment when the universe offered a spectacle of grace and balance and asked nothing in return but your wonder. And maybe, just maybe, something in you will begin to orbit too, a thought, a feeling, a sense of time that moves not with ticking clocks but with slow circles of memory. In the rings of Saturn, we do not just see the universe. We see the part of ourselves that longs to understand without needing to explain, that listens without needing to speak, that loves even when the story has no words. And that is why the rings matter, because they are a reminder that the most lasting things are not always the loudest. Sometimes they are simply the ones that keep circling, waiting for us to notice. Far beyond the reach of sunlight's warm fingers, Saturn drifts in the velvet hush of deep space. Around it spin dozens, then hundreds of moons, some as grand as planets, others no larger than a drifting boulder. 128 and still counting. A choir of shadows circling a giant, each one unique, each one carrying a secret. These moons are quiet but not silent. They whisper in their movement, in their orbits, in their icy reflections, not with voices but with presence. And if you listen softly enough, not with ears but with wonder, you might hear the story they're trying to tell. Some of these moons have names that sound like lullabies: Tethys, Rhea, Hyperion, Dione. Others are newly discovered, nameless still, catalogued by numbers, waiting for someone to give them identity. Yet even unnamed, they are not unseen. Telescopes on Earth and spacecraft like Cassini have watched them for decades, tracing their paths, mapping their surfaces, searching their faces for meaning. Each moon dances to its own rhythm, some spinning quickly, others locked in eternal embrace with Saturn, showing only one face forever, as if too shy to turn away. There is a beauty in their quietness. Unlike planets that blaze and shine, these moons prefer the soft glow of borrowed light. They reflect the pale sunlight that reaches them, just enough to show shape and texture, craters carved by time, ridges raised by ice, lines etched by ancient impacts. Meh. Why if Saturn's moons are icy, white and smooth like frozen sighs, while others are dark, coated in dust, absorbing light like secrets never spoken? Take Enceladus, for instance. Beneath its smooth white crust lies an ocean hidden and vast. From its south pole, geysers spray into space, jets of saltwater, mist, and organic molecules pouring into the void. These whispers of water feed Saturn's fainty ring, creating a connection between moon and planet that feels almost like breath. Through this subtle exchange, Enceladus tells us that life, perhaps, could exist even in the coldest corners of the cosmos. It does not shout this fact, it hints. Suggests, murmurs it through frozen plumes. Then there's Titan, Saturn's largest moon, a world of thick orange skies and lakes not made of water but of methane and ethane. Rivers carve valleys through its surface. Clouds drift above landscapes no human has walked. Titan's voice is deeper, more complex. It doesn't just whisper, it dreams. It dreams in hydrocarbons, in chemistry, in long seasons and slow changes. It is Earth-like but not Earth, a parallel memory, a cousin of what could have been or might someday be. And among the larger moons there are smaller ones, tiny irregular shapes caught in Saturn's pull. Some orbit backwards, some are tilted oddly as if they were captured from elsewhere. They speak in fragments, their origins uncertain. Perhaps they came from the Kuiper belt or were born of collisions long ago. Their surfaces are pockmarked, their paths unpredictable, but still they orbit, still they whisper. These whispers, of course, are not audible. They are gravitational, orbital. They are written in mass and momentum, in tilt and timing. But scientists have learned to read these patterns to decode the quiet language of motion. The dance of the moons around Saturn is like a mobile in a nursery, delicate, balanced, always turning. Each moon affects the others. Each one causes a ripple, a shift, a gentle nudge in the vast celestial pond. Imagine watching this from afar, from a place of stillness. You would see Saturn at the center, majestic and unmoving, and all around it, these tiny sparks in slow motion. One might disappear behind the planet, another peek out from the rings. Their movements are not random. They follow paths laid down by gravity's hand, and in those paths stories unfold. Stories of birth and breakup, of companionship and exile, of quiet persistence. And it is not just Saturn's gravity that speaks. These moons pull on each other, too. Some are in resonance, locked in rhythmic harmony. For every 2 orbits of one, the other completes exactly one. This creates patterns, repetitions, alignments that echo through time. These resonances are like soft songs sung over millions of years. They help keep the system stable. They preserve the dance. What do the moons whisper? They whisper of the past, of the solar system's early days when everything was hot and violent and new. They whisper of the present, where ice meets dust in a hush of movement. And maybe, just maybe, they whisper of the future, of what could arise from frozen oceans and hidden chemistry, of what new stories may one day orbit in these silent skies. So the next time you look at an image of Saturn's moons, remember, each one is not just a rock. It is a whisper in the dark, a quiet companion in the long drift of time, a reminder that even in the vastness, even in the cold, something is always circling, always speaking. Let's drift further now, into the deeper silence where Saturn's moons continue their endless circling, a slow ballet painted on the canvas of space. These moons are not just stones floating in the void, they are witnesses. They have seen things we never will, collisions and cradles, storms that never touch air, the long quiet unfolding of cosmic time. Each carries a memory, not in pages or pictures, but in layers of ice, in scars and grooves, in motion carved by gravity's patient hands. Consider Rhea, a moon so heavily cratered it looks like a frozen history book. Each impact a sentence, each mark a whisper of what once passed too close. Scientists believe Rhea may even have a thin ring system of its own, something unheard of for a moon. If true, it would be a quiet echo of Saturn's grandeur, a small satellite mirroring its planet in soft reverence. Even moons can imitate the giants they orbit, not by force but by resonance, by listening, by absorbing. Then there is Iapetus, half dark as charcoal, half bright as snow. Its dual face tells a tale of contradiction. Why one side so black, why the other so pale? Theories swirl like mist. Some think dark particles from other moons settled on one side. Others suspect ancient chemistry playing tricks beneath the surface. Whatever the reason, Iapetus spins slowly through its orbit like a secret kept only halfway. Its dark side and light side are like mood and memory, one absorbing, one reflecting. And what about Mimas, a tiny moon with the giant scar? One massive crater gives it the look of a giant eye, always open, always watching. That impact nearly shattered it long ago, but the moon held together. Its whisper is one of endurance, of fracture and survival. It doesn't need to be large to be loud in meaning. Mimas shows us that even the smallest voices can carry the strongest echoes. The smaller moons, too, deserve their place in this quiet choir. Moons like Helene, Tellisto, Calypso, these Trojan moons nestle in Lagrange points, balancing perfectly along the orbits of bigger siblings. They don't follow, they don't lead. They simply glide beside, held in place by invisible equations. It's a kind of companionship only the universe can design, a friendship measured in millions of miles, unshaken by time. And among the newly discovered ones, those 128 and counting, many are tiny and irregular. Some tumble through space like forgotten toys. Others are captured objects from far beyond Saturn's birthplace. Their paths are wild, their orbits tilted or twisted. They do not conform, but they remain. These are the wanderers who found a home, not through symmetry, but through gravity's quiet embrace. Even the restless can be held gently. Saturn's moons do not exist in isolation. They shape the planet's magnetic field. They disturb the rings. They trade material, even leave footprints in Saturn's vast auroras. Enceladus sprays icy particles that become part of the system. Titan sends gases into the magnetosphere. These exchanges are invisible but not meaningless. They are the whispers becoming conversation. The moons don't just orbit, they interact. They leave fingerprints on the fabric of Saturn's presence. And in the long stretch of time, some moons may collide, others may crumble. Moons may give birth to rings or form from rings themselves. In this system, beginnings and endings blur. A moon becomes dust, dust becomes a ring clumps together again. It is a cycle of becoming and unbecoming. Saturn's moons teach us that identity is not fixed, it's fluid, circling, shaped by pull and proximity. Back on Earth, scientists use computer models to predict the motions of these moons. The math is exquisite, but beyond the math is the marvel, because what we're really doing is eavesdropping on gravity's conversation, a quiet talk between stones and space, rhythm and resistance. The moons move not by accident, but in patterns deeper than we can see. They have known Saturn longer than we have known ourselves. And yet in knowing them, we learn a little more about us, about what it means to orbit something greater, to be shaped by forces we cannot touch, to circle again and again until we find peace in the repetition. The moons remind us that even in silence, even in darkness, there is meaning, there is beauty, there is motion that matters. So when we speak of Saturn's moons, let us not just speak of numbers and names. Let us speak of memories frozen in rock, of whispers made of water and dust, of voices not lost, just quiet, the kind of quiet that holds more truth than noise ever could. Now let's linger for a while in the stillness between moons, the spaces where their gravity no longer tugs and their paths no longer cross. In this pause, something soft begins to settle, a recognition, a truth that is less spoken and more felt. These moons are more than objects. They are reminders of what lasts, of what changes, and of how silence itself can carry memory. The story of Saturn's moons is still being written. Every new telescope, every returning signal from space reveals another name, another shape, another thread in the pattern. With each discovery, our map of the Saturnian family grows, not in color alone, but in feeling. The cold data becomes warm curiosity. The orbits become echoes. These moons, no matter how distant or dim, continue to whisper back to us through time. And yet many of them will fade. Some are destined to crash into Saturn after countless spirals. Others may break apart under tidal strain, their pieces joining the rings or drifting into the black. Their ends will not be loud. There will be no explosions we can see, only a slow dissolving, a quiet farewell, like a snowflake melting into a river that continues on. And still, even in their vanishing, they teach us something. That presence is not measured by permanence, but by connection. There is a moon called Dione which shows signs of a possible subsurface ocean hidden beneath a crust of ice. It circles Saturn with an elegance so subtle you might miss it, but it's there, holding its secrets close. The suggestion of liquid water, of warmth beneath the cold, is not just scientific, it is emotional, because beneath every frozen surface in the cosmos we hope for warmth, for life, for something stirring where nothing seems to move. When we look up at Saturn and its moons, we are not just looking at a distant planet. We are looking at a reflection of our own questions. What holds us in place? What makes us wander? How do we change without breaking? The moons do not answer directly, they show us instead. Through their paths, their interactions, their quiet resistance, they offer a language of motion that says, you are not alone, you are part of something. The newly discovered moons, especially, add something sacred to this story. They are tiny, faint, hard to find. Some complete an orbit only once every few Earth years. They test our patience. They demand attention. And when they are finally confirmed, there is joy. Not just scientific achievement, but something deeper, a feeling that we've found a missing piece of the sky, that the family has grown and the dark has one less secret. It is easy to overlook what is small, easy to forget what does not shine, but the moons whisper otherwise. They remind us that wonder is not reserved for the bright or the loud. It belongs also to the quiet companions, to the shadows that stay, to the circling presences that mark time not with sound but with returning, with remaining. From Earth, the moons of Saturn appear as specks. Through a telescope, they become dots that move ever so slightly. But when you study their patterns, their histories, their chemistry, they become worlds. Not just frozen rocks, but places. Places that tug at imagination. Places that remind us the universe is vast and filled with rhythm. And rhythm, in its gentlest form, is a kind of music. Saturn's moons sing not in sound, but in cycles. Enceladus with its geysers, Titan with its lakes, Hyperion tumbling chaotically like a spinning coin. Each one plays its note. Each one fills a gap in the harmony. And we, listening from afar, become part of the audience, perhaps even part of the orchestra. The Cassini mission gave us years of listening. It taught us how to read the language of orbit and ice. It taught us that moons, no matter how small, leave trails, not just through space but through human thought, The names we gave them, some ancient, some modern, will outlast even the spacecraft. And as more moons are found, the naming continues, a soft human gesture reaching into the cosmos. And now, with every new moon discovered around Saturn, we remember that we are not finished. The map is not complete. There are still things hiding in the dark, waiting to be seen, waiting to be named. And each one, no matter how faint, carries a whisper, a trace of history, a piece of the great turning story that spans beyond us. So if you find yourself under a quiet sky, with thoughts too loud to carry, remember Saturn's moons. They are still there, turning without need for permission, without need for applause. They ask nothing of us, yet give so much. Their whispers are gentle reminders. You belong, you orbit, you affect and are affected, and even in your silence, you are never alone. In the darkness that surrounds Saturn, there are more than rocks. There are companions, listeners, keepers of the long memory of space. And though their voices are soft, they echo across centuries, across planets, across hearts. The moons whisper not just of science, but of belonging, of quiet wonder, of endless return. There is a place in the outer solar system where time does not tick but twirls, where the laws of motion do not push but pull and sway. It is the realm around Saturn where its moons, its many children, move in a dance as old as their orbits, choreographed by gravity and silence. No music plays, and yet every movement has rhythm, every shift has purpose. Around Saturn, the moons do not just orbit, they dance. Each moon holds a unique step in this cosmic ballet. Some follow perfect ellipses, gliding smoothly like seasoned dancers. Others wobble slightly, swaying in and out of Saturn's grasp, caught between loyalty and rebellion. Some twirl fast, spinning on their axes like children in play. Others rotate slowly, locked to Saturn's face as if caught in an endless gaze. This is not random. It is resonance, a shared rhythm beneath the stillness of space. Among the most elegant are the moons locked in resonance with each other. Mimas, Enceladus, and Tethys form such a trio, each one's orbit timed to the next in a pattern that repeats like breath. For every 2 orbits of Mimas, Enceladus completes one. Their paths may never cross, but their fates are entwined. Like partners who never touch hands but still move as one, they orbit in harmony, each shaping the other's motion with invisible tugs. This balance is delicate. A push too strong, a pull too far, and the dance could break. But it doesn't. Instead, it evolves. Over centuries, the orbits stretch and relax, creating tides inside the moons, heating their cores, cracking their surfaces. It is motion that warms, that feeds the geysers of Enceladus and stirs the buried oceans of Dione. Saturn's dance is not just about grace, it is about creation. Some moons act as shepherds, guiding the edges of Saturn's rings, Prometheus and P. Andorra, orbiting near the F ring, keep its strands from unraveling. Like dancers running alongside a silk ribbon, they nudge and tug the ring's particles, shaping them into curves and clumps. Their gravitational steps leave ripples behind, waves that speak of emotion too subtle to see but too powerful to ignore. Others are Trojan moons, caught in the gravitational sweet spots beside larger moons like Tethys and Dione. These Trojans, Tellisto, Calypso, Hellene, float along quietly, neither leading nor lagging but always there. Like echoes that follow without fading, they are the background dancers that hold the rhythm in place, soft and essential. Even the tiniest moons have roles. Some are irregular, spinning wildly, their orbits tilted or retrograde. They break the pattern, but they don't break the dance. Instead, they add texture, an unexpected twirl, a step offbeat that reminds us that not all harmony comes from sameness. Some comes from contrast, from surprise, from the strange shapes that still find a place on the stage. The planet at the center, Saturn itself, does not command with noise. It spins with dignity, wearing its rings like a crown of ice and memory. Its gravity reaches outward, gently directing the motion of its many companions. It does not pull all the strings, but its presence is felt in every orbit, every step, every sway. This dance is not just motion, it is history. The current arrangement of Saturn's moons took billions of years to unfold. Collisions may have occurred, captures, mergers, losses. Each moon that orbits today is a survivor of that choreography. Each one carries a story written in its path, in the heat it holds, in the way it moves when Saturn breathes. And so, from afar, the system appears calm, dozens of moons circling quietly, their motions predictable. But underneath that calm is motion, energy, a coordination so complex it can only be held by the rules of gravity itself. What we see as a still photograph is, in truth, a living performance, a ballet without pause, a song without sound. And we are the distant audience, watching with eyes and instruments, trying to understand the meaning behind the movements. We plot the orbits, we model the resonance, we listen to the frequencies that echo from Enceladus's geysers and Titan's shifting lakes. but still, some part of the dance remains beyond numbers. It is something we feel more than explain, a kind of grace that humbles. Because motion at its most elegant does not need noise, it does not need force, it needs only connection. And that is what Saturn's children have, an unbreakable connection to one another, to their planet, to the silence they move through. They remind us that even in the vastness of space, where nothing touches and nothing speaks, there can still be rhythm, still be meaning, still be beauty. So let yourself imagine standing in the emptiness, watching this silent performance unfold beneath the rings. The moons drift by, each in their lane, each on their cue. No spotlight, no applause, just the quiet music of gravity guiding every turn. And in that stillness, you might begin to feel something stir inside, a recognition, perhaps, of your own place in the dance. Let's move closer now, not in distance, but in understanding, to the quiet ways these moons speak to one another. Their dance is not just about paths through space. It is about balance, timing, and gentle influence. Around Saturn, movement is not random. It is layered with intention, shaped by invisible agreements between rock, ice, and pull. Each moon is a partner in a system so complex, so delicately tuned, that even the slightest change can ripple outward like a sigh across a still lake. Take Titan, the largest of Saturn's children, wrapped in thick orange haze. It moves slowly with weight and presence, casting a gravitational shadow that shapes the orbits of nearby moons. Beneath its clouds lies a world of rivers and lakes, not of water, but of liquid methane and ethane. These are not warm places, but they are alive with motion. Storms gather, rain falls, rivers flow and carve valleys. Titan dances not with speed, but with depth. It changes the stage it moves across, leaving behind landscapes that evolve even in the cold. Titan's slow spin and thick atmosphere create tides, not in oceans, but in the crust itself. The moon's icy shell flexes ever so slightly, its interior pressing outward, then pulling inward. Scientists believe there may be a global ocean beneath, held in place by the warmth of gravitational stretching. It is the dance that warms, not sunlight. It is movement that keeps the heart of this moon alive. Now turn your gaze to Enceladus, smaller and smoother, gleaming like a marble in Saturn's shadow. It too holds an ocean beneath its surface, an ocean that vents through cracks near its south pole in bright plumes of ice and vapor. These geysers do not rise from heat alone, but from the rhythm of orbit. Enceladus is locked in resin. Ants with Dione, their paths intertwined. As one pulls away, the other tugs back. This back and forth builds stress, and stress becomes warmth. Warmth becomes motion. Motion becomes life-giving water bursting into the cold. The plumes of Enceladus are more than beautiful. They are bridges. The material ejected into space feeds Saturn's faint E-ring, connecting moon and planet in a trail of glittering mist. Even the smallest particles find their place in the dance. The orbits, the tides, the jets of frozen breath, all move together in a quiet loop of giving and return. It is not just a performance. It is a relationship. Farther out, moons like Apetus follow lonely, tilted paths, almost perpendicular to the others. Their orbits seem separate, but they still feel the pull of the group. Apetus, with its dual tone, light on one side, dark on the other, whispers of history. Perhaps it once rotated faster, and the dark side is dust gathered by its own momentum. Or perhaps another moon, long gone, left a trail that stained half of Apetus's face. Whatever the truth, it carries its contrast through every orbit like a dancer wearing a divided costume, spinning in silence, never shedding its story. Other moons, like Janus and Epimetheus, perform an especially delicate step. They share nearly the same orbit, circling Saturn at similar distances. Every few years they approach one another, but instead of colliding they switch places. One moves slightly inward, the other slightly outward, then they continue. Their paths are not accidents, they are agreements. A silent understanding passed over time. It is the closest thing in space to a handshake. There is something humbling in the way these moons negotiate space. There is no conflict, no dominance, just motion shaped by mutual gravity, a system where presence creates influence but never force. Each moon finds its rhythm, whether it spins fast, slow, or not at all, whether it tumbles or orbits steadily. Some moons are round, shaped by their own gravity. Others are jagged, never large enough to smooth their edges, but all belong, all move in harmony. And though the dance seems eternal, it is not unchanging. Tides shift, orbits drift. Moons migrate outward slowly, inch by inch, over millions of years. Resonances form and break. Moons that once circled tightly may eventually drift away. New relationships may form. The choreography rewrites itself with every turn, yet it never falls apart. Even in change, the rhythm holds. What binds it all is gravity, not as a command, but as an invitation. A gentle tug that says, "Come closer, not too close, now stay." It is the most patient of forces, shaping without shouting. It bends paths into circles, turns collisions into embraces. It teaches without words, and the moons listen. Every movement they make is a reply. Back on Earth, we often think of motion as something loud. Running, driving, spinning, but in Saturn's realm, movement is quiet, a slow pirouette, a drift, a lean, the kind of motion that feels more like breath than step. It reminds us that not all dances need music. Some dances are felt in the space between sounds, in the way things return, in the way they move together even when far apart. So as the moons of Saturn continue their ancient steps, circling through the cold, they teach us something soft but powerful. That presence can shape, that stillness can move, that even in the absence of sound there can be rhythm, and that in a universe where chaos often reigns, there are still places where everything moves in agreement, bound by grace alone. Now imagine that the dance has no beginning and no end, only movement, only presence. Saturn does not command with force, and its moons do not obey with fear. They circle because they are bound not by rules written down but by something deeper. Trust, perhaps, balance, a shared stillness that echoes through every loop, every wobble, every echo of gravity. And in this soft, gravity-woven ballet, we see not just motion, but meaning. Each moon plays its part without asking to be seen. Their movements are not for show. They do not perform for cameras or charts. They move because they must, because that is what they were shaped to do. Because somewhere, long ago, a collision or a gathering of dust began a path, and that path became rhythm, and that rhythm became story. Even the newest moons, those just discovered, already belong to the dance. Tiny fragments in distant orbits, some just a few kilometers across, tumbling slowly through the dark. We track them now with delicate instruments and growing wonder. And each one, no matter how small or misshapen, adds something vital. A new beat, a hidden harmony, a new space between movements where beauty can grow. There is one moon named Pan, shaped like a flying saucer, orbiting inside the Encke gap of Saturn's a ring. Pan clears the space around it as it moves, gathering particles into a ridge that encircles its middle. It is a rin. G-bearer within the rings, a child of the system shaping the system itself. Pan's form is not accidental. It is born of motion, of balance between inward pull and outward spin. Its odd shape is its signature. Its identity is written in movement. There is another moon, Atlas, shaped like a pebble wearing a scarf. It too travels along the rings, sculpting edges as it goes. These moons do not live separately from Saturn's rings. They help create them, define them, maintain them. They are not guests in this system. They are caretakers, gardeners of frozen light. Somewhere in the far outer reaches, other moons like Phoebe drift, orbiting in the opposite direction, retrograde, defiant, distant. Phoebe is dark, ancient, likely captured from beyond Saturn's traditional family. Its surface tells a different story, rough and cratered, older than many of the inner moons. And yet even Phoebe is part of the whole. It plays a deeper note in the melody, a reminder that not all belonging looks the same, that even the wanderers find orbit. Even the wild find rhythm. And that is the truth Saturn's children carry quietly as they move. They are not just objects pulled by gravity. They are memories, possibilities, motions that make space meaningful. The way they sway and tilt and stretch speaks of things we cannot see, past collisions, buried oceans, thermal tides. They are storytellers, not in words, but in paths drawn by time. Cassini watched this dance for over a decade, capturing images that shimmer like dreams. We saw moons casting shadows on Saturn's face, watched tiny particles caught in moonlight, followed trails that looked like stardust but were ice and gravity, speaking in ripples. We didn't just observe, we began to listen. And in that listening, we learned how much could be said without a single sound. And though Cassini is gone now, its memory remains in the paths it charted, in the glimpses it offered, in the way it moved through the Saturnian system like a guest humbled by wonder. Its final dives through the space between the planet and the innermost rings were not just scientific maneuvers. They were farewells, a last swirl in the middle of the stage, a bow at the edge of the quiet. And perhaps this is the truest thing the moons of Saturn have to offer us, not just data, not just curiosity, but a model, a reminder that movement can be meaningful, that stillness can have depth, that connection does not require touching, and harmony does not need applause. Saturn's children dance without end, and in watching them, we feel a stirring within our own orbit-bound hearts. Because aren't we too dancing in circles, around the sun, around each other, around our quiet questions? We too are pulled by forces unseen, shaped by relationships we may not fully understand. We too find ourselves moving to rhythms we did not write but still belong to. And perhaps that is not chaos. Perhaps that is the deeper harmony, the music we forgot we were part of. So as the moons of Saturn continue their ancient performance, circling, balancing, whispering in their steps, may we continue to watch, and to listen, and to remember that in the cold and quiet of space there is still warmth, there is still movement, there is still a story told only in dance, a story not of domination but of grace, of shared space, of cosmic choreography that reminds us that the universe, even at its quietest, is always in motion, always speaking, always dancing. In the outer reaches of the solar system, beyond the warmth of the inner planets and the steady breath of the sun, there is a hush so deep it hums. It is not the kind of silence we know on Earth, not a quiet room or a forest stilled by snow, but something older, larger, woven into the fabric of space itself. Out here, around Saturn and beyond, silence is not the absence of sound. It is a presence, a weight, a language spoken without words, yet understood by everything that moves through it. Saturn dwells in this silence like a king in a vast and echoing hall. Its rings stretch outward in icy arcs, shimmering like frozen sound waves, while its moons orbit in steady quiet. The planet makes no noise we can hear, yet everything around it feels shaped by some ancient tone. This is a realm where sound does not travel, but resonance still exists. Vibrations ripple through magnetic fields, through particle streams, through patterns too slow or too vast for the human ear. Here, silence does not mean stillness, it means depth. Imagine standing on one of Saturn's moons, perhaps Rhea or distant Apetus, surrounded by this cosmic hush. There is no wind, no bird call, no rushing river. Your breath would be the loudest sound, and yet if you closed your eyes you might feel a kind of rhythm beneath your feet, not sound exactly but motion, not music but gravity's slow pulse. The planet turns, the moons spin, the rings drift, all of it in quiet procession, like a procession through a cathedral too wide for W. Alls. Scientists study this silence not with ears, but with instruments that see what we cannot hear. Cassini, the spacecraft that once flew through Saturn's domain, carried tools to listen in new ways, to measure electric fields, to trace magnetic ripples, to capture plasma waves. And what it found was astonishing. Saturn's magnetic field sings in radio waves, rising and falling like the tides. Bursts of plasma ring out like sudden gasps. Even the rings create a kind of whisper. As particles collide and shift in patterns we can only trace by light. This kind of sound, if we can call it that, is not for human ears. It is too large, too soft, too strange. But when translated into frequencies we can hear, it becomes haunting, eerie yet beautiful, a moan that rises and falls, echoing across vast distances, a sigh stretched across millions of kilometers. Saturn's silence, it turns out, is full of echoes. Echoes of storms, of particles caught in magnetic loops, of moons tugging on fields like fingers brushing harp strings made of airless space. And then there is the silence between discoveries, the long stillness of waiting, of watching a distant dot move 1 pixel across a screen, of tracking a signal over months, even years. This too is part of the echo, because space speaks slowly. Its stories unfold across centuries, sometimes across lifetimes. And the scientists who listen must learn patience, a quietude of the mind that matches the stillness of the skies. But silence does more than carry data. It invites reflection. Out in Saturn's realm, without sound to distract or rush us, we are left to consider things differently. We begin to notice subtlety, to appreciate small movements, to feel the difference between emptiness and peace. Silence in space is not hollow, it is whole. It is a presence that holds everything together, a soft container where moons can spin and rings can shimmer and time can move without pressure. Even on Earth we feel it. When the night is clear and Saturn rises in the southern sky, there's a kind of hush that comes with it. Not because the planet brings silence with it, but because its presence reminds us of it. In a world filled with noise and motion, Saturn hangs in the dark like a reminder of the long, quiet truths, of things that move without needing to speak, of beauty that does not demand attention. This is why people throughout history have looked to Saturn with awe. The Babylonians marked its path. The Romans named it after the god of time. Galileo drew it with his trembling telescope hands, unsure of what the rings were. And even now, with images sharper than ever before, there is still mystery, still silence, still something unsaid. Because Saturn does not explain itself, it does not rush to answer. It simply continues, spinning, circling, glowing faintly in the dark. Its silence is its message. And that message is not emptiness, but invitation. Come closer, it says. Look longer, feel the echo. Let your thoughts slow enough to hear what cannot be said. So in this place beyond sound, we find something unexpected, a deeper kind of knowing, a wisdom wrapped in stillness, a universe that does not shout but waits. And in that waiting, in that soft and endless hush, we learn to listen not with ears but with attention, with wonder, with presence. And suddenly the silence becomes music. Not the kind we compose, but the kind we remember. The kind that rises from within when the world outside grows quiet. the kind that Saturn plays without instruments, without notes, without end. Let's drift deeper now into the quiet that surrounds Saturn, that invisible ocean of stillness where sound cannot swim but meaning still moves. In this realm, silence becomes the backdrop against which all cosmic stories unfold. It is not a void to be filled, but a field where patterns can stretch wide and subtle vibrations can whisper without ever breaking the calm. This is where Saturn's moons turn in long arcs, and its rings glimmer like a language of motion, not needing sound to be understood. Silence here holds weight, like gravity for the spirit. It allows things to emerge slowly, to reveal themselves without pressure. In the absence of noise, we begin to feel what lies underneath. We notice the slow shifting of a moon's shadow across Saturn's face. We notice how a storm moves not with thunder but with swirling silence, an oval of churning clouds that lasts for months or years, never heard, only seen. And we start to realize that silence is not the opposite of activity. It is the space that lets activity breathe. The auroras near Saturn's poles shimmer without crackle or flare. They flicker across the atmosphere in ghostly greens and purples, glowing from within like soft lanterns caught in an eternal wind. No sound escapes them, yet their presence is full. They are born of invisible collisions, charged particles funneling through magnetic fields, brushing against atmospheric atoms, a silent X. Change that lights the sky with movement and meaning, all held within a hush too vast for music. Even Saturn's rotation is quiet. It spins once every 10.5 hours, fast for its size, but it does not spin with friction or growl. There is no grinding, no creaking, just the smooth turn of gas and cloud marked by faint bands and drifting storms. And as the planet turns, it sends ripples into its own magnetic field, pulses that stretch out into space, brushing against the moons, stirring the plasma like a breath slowly drawn in and let go. One of the most haunting examples of Saturn's silent voice is the so-called spokes in its rings, dark, radial shadows that appear and disappear unpredictably. They move like ghosts across the icy bands, sometimes fading before we can capture them clearly. Scientists believe they are caused by tiny particles lifted by electrostatic forces, perhaps charged by the planet's magnetic field, but no one fully knows, and in that mystery the silence deepens. These fleeting shadows feel like Saturn's own thoughts, half-formed, half-seen, drifting through a mind of ice and gravity. Cassini once flew through the gap between Saturn and its innermost ring, a space so narrow and so quiet that it had never been crossed before. As it passed through, there was almost nothing. No dust, no particles, just silence. The spacecraft's instruments, usually buzzing with incoming data, found only absence. And yet that absence was not empty. It was a gift, a breathless corridor carved through a storm of matter, as if Saturn had cleared a path for the visitor to pass. In that silence, Cassini listened. It mapped fields, it traced gravity. It looked down into the atmosphere, catching glimpses of pressure waves, of color shifts, of patterns too vast for any sound. And in doing so, it taught us something vital, that the universe speaks in many ways and not all of them can be heard. Some must be felt, some must be watched, some must simply be allowed to unfold. Back on Earth, scientists turned the data into sound, not because Saturn made sound, but because we needed a way to understand. They converted radio waves into audio, mapped frequencies into tones, and when they played those ghostly songs, they were like dreams. Saturn moaning, Saturn singing, Saturn echoing with the cries of particles spinning through magnetic spirals. It was beautiful, but it wasn't Saturn's voice. It was our translation, a whisper heard through the lens of human need. But perhaps we do not need to turn silence into sound to understand it. Perhaps the silence of space is meant to remain whole, to be known not by the ears, but by the stillness it invites in us. Because when we sit with Saturn in the imagination, when we picture its rings, its moons, its faintly glowing storms, we do not hear it, we feel it, a pressure behind the ribs, a pull towards something larger, a pause that quiets the mind. In that pause, meaning gathers, just like the moons gather into families and the rings gather from dust and the shadows gather under the tilt of light. Saturn teaches us that presence is not always loud, that some of the most powerful truths arrive in whispers, and that in the cold beyond our world, there is a place where silence doesn't mean nothingness, it means everything waiting to be noticed. So we watch, we listen, not with our ears but with our attention. We measure the tilt of rings, the flicker of distant lights, the shift of orbit over time. These are the notes in Saturn's silent song, not sharp, not sung, just felt, over years, over centuries. A song without a sound but with infinite echoes. Now imagine this silence not as distance but as closeness, a kind of nearness that cannot be measured in kilometers but in attention. In the final echoes of Saturn's quiet realm, we begin to see that this hush is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything. It is not empty space, but full awareness. And in this space, where the planet turns and the moons drift, something deeper than sound begins to speak. The silence teaches us to notice, to pause and trace the faint motion of a moon across Saturn's shadow, to watch the soft flicker of a ring's edge disappear into darkness only to reappear again. These are not events that demand applause. They happen with no audience, no spotlight, but they are steady, enduring. They continue whether we notice or not, and in that constancy we are invited to let go of urgency, to rest within the pace of something much older, much slower than us. There is something healing in this silence, something that loosens the tightness in our thinking. On Earth we fill every gap with sound, conversations, machines, alerts, demands, but out here there is no such clutter. The emptiness around Saturn holds its shape. It does not rush, it does not ask, it only waits, and in that waiting we find space to breathe, to simply exist, to remember what it means to listen without expectatio. And the moons know this language well. Tethys, smooth and pale, circles patiently, never rushing its orbit. Dione follows behind, quiet in its motion, heavy with its own hidden ocean. Rhea lingers even farther, its surface cratered with ancient stories no voice has told. These moons do not compete, they do not interrupt. They glide, each on their path, keeping time with Saturn's slow-turning heartbeat. In their silence there is solidarity. And even the things we cannot see, the particles too small, the waves too wide, are moving. The faint electric pulses in Saturn's magnetosphere flow outward, past the moons, past the rings, past the edge of known space. They do not crash or collide, they spread, they ripple, they touch everything. It is a music of presence, not pressure, and it reminds us that everything is connected, even in the absence of noise. When Cassini ended its journey, it did so not with fireworks or explosion, but with a silent descent into Saturn's atmosphere. As it fell, it transmitted its final data in quiet pulses, a last breath of knowledge sent across the void. Then silence. No echo, no sound, just the planet folding Cassini into its clouds, a soft ending, a return. And though the spacecraft is gone, its quiet story remains, written in the way we now see Saturn, not just as a planet, but as a place of reflection. Even now, years later, the images remain. Saturn's rings, backlit by the sun, the pale blue dot of Earth seen through the shadows, the haze of Titan, the glint of Enceladus's plume. These are pictures that do not shout. They sit quietly in our memory like dreams remembered at dawn. They do not fade because they were loud. They stay because they were still. And maybe that is the greatest echo of all, not one we hear, but one we carry. A silence that returns when we look at the stars. A pause that opens when we think of distant moons. A softness that hums beneath the surface of thought. Saturn does not need to make sound to leave an impression. It simply exists, and in that existence it offers something rare, a chance to be quiet with the universe. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by the rush of life, remember Saturn. Remember the way it turns slowly, the way its rings catch light without a sound, the way its moons follow paths older than memory, never needing to explain themselves. Let that memory be a hush within you, a place where you too can orbit gently, where you too can move without noise. Because in the outer skies, where silence echoes across distance and time, we find not emptiness, but the deepest kind of presence. And that presence does not need a name, or a sound, or even a story. It only needs to be felt, like gravity, like love, like the soft spin of Saturn beneath a sky too quiet for words. Gravity is often described as a force, a pull, an invisible thread that binds us to Earth, that keeps the planets in orbit, that holds galaxies together in their spirals. But around Saturn, where the moons drift like slow-moving thoughts and the rings shimmer with frozen echoes, gravity becomes something else entirely. It becomes memory, a kind of remembering etched into motion, a quiet insistence that nothing is ever truly alone. From the outside, it might seem like Saturn's gravity is just doing its job, pulling on moons, holding rings in place, sculpting curves into orbits. But when you begin to look closely, when you feel the way gravity moves things not just toward but around, you begin to understand. Gravity here does not only pull, it cradles, it recalls. It holds space for things long gone and shapes the paths of things yet to come. It remembers not with thoughts but with motion. Take the rings themselves. They are not solid bands but an ocean of fragments, each piece following its own invisible loop, yet all of them held in place by Saturn's pull, and not just Saturn-S. The nearby moons whisper with their own gravity, gently tugging, smoothing edges, opening gaps. These shepherd moons remember every ripple they cause, every tug leaves a mark. Over time, the rings reshape, like memories settling into different forms. The tiny moon Daphnis orbits within the Keeler gap, its gravity drawing waves into the ring edges as it passes. These waves are not sharp, not sudden. They roll outward like the wake of a boat, soft and wide, and then disappear. But if you looked long enough, if you followed each loop, you'd see that nothing truly fades. The memory of the moon's passing is written into the patterns, repeated with every orbit. That's what gravity does, it remembers in movement. Beyond the rings, larger moons like Rhea and Dione carve subtle changes into each other's orbits. Over decades, centuries, millennia, these tugs add up. Their paths shift like thoughts revisited, adjusted by new perspectives. This is not chaos, it is choreography, the result of long-held influences that shape even when they're no longer near. Gravity is the hand that never touches but ever lets go. Even Titan, massive and slow, moves not only through space but through Saturn's own shape. As Titan orbits, its pull raises tides, not in water but in the atmosphere and layers of gas. Saturn in turn shifts slightly, bulging toward its moon and then relaxing as the moon moves on. These tides are not dramatic, they don't crash or roar, they are quiet, internal. Yet over time they cause Saturn to change. And Titan too is affected, its orbit stretching, its pace altering. It's a dialogue made entirely of motion, a conversation that never uses words, only presence. Some moons are captured, their orbits telling stories of elsewhere. Phoebe, dark and retrograde, likely came from beyond, but even here within Saturn's pull it is remembered. Its unusual path is not corrected but kept, a signature of its difference. Saturn does not erase the history of what it captures, it folds it in. It lets that strange gravity remain, a gentle reminder that even outsiders can find a home. And even the smallest particles, those that drift in the faint E-ring or settle along the faint arcs between moons, respond to this remembering. Some come from Enceladus's geysers shot into space in icy streams. Others are the remains of collisions or gradual shedding. They fall and rise, orbit and settle, guided by the memory of where they came from. Enceladus gives and Saturn receives. Then Saturn returns through gravity, through motion, through balance. This exchange is not just energy, it is remembrance. To us, gravity is usually felt as weight, as the pressure beneath our feet. But here around Saturn, gravity is story. Each orbit is a sentence, each wobble is a phrase, each resonance is a paragraph shared between moons who never meet but always influence. When Cassini entered Saturn's gravity, it became part of that memory. Its path curved, bent, circled, each maneuver written by Saturn's hand. Even in its final dive, Cassini was held. Not torn or thrown, but guided gently into the planet it had studied, like a letter returned to its sender. And perhaps that is what gravity truly is, not a force to be overcome, but a kind of cosmic remembering. It gathers everything. It binds without possession. It shapes without control. It welcomes without judgment. And through it, the universe holds itself together, not rigidly, but lovingly, quietly, continuously. So if you ever find yourself looking up at Saturn through a telescope, know that what you see, the rings, the moons, the soft glow, is not just a snapshot. It is a memory in motion. It is gravity remembering every touch, every turn, every moment shared in the deep silence of space. And it is still remembering, still shaping, still holding space for what comes next. Let us wander further into this quiet gravity, the kind that does not announce itself but reveals its presence in slow curves and ancient patterns. Around Saturn, memory lives not in archives or books but in movement. The paths of moons are not just orbits, they are retellings. Repetitions of long-ago moments preserved by gravity's soft persistence. Every loop is a recollection. Every bend is a trace of influence left behind, shaping what comes next. Consider the moons that are bound together through resonance. Mimas, Enceladus, and Tethys, each locked in an invisible rhythm that stretches across space and time. Their gravitational pulls keep each other in step, like dancers circling a floor, adjusting with every motion. Enceladus, in particular, feels this remembering deep within. Its orbit around Saturn, slightly elongated by resonance, causes its interior to flex and warm, creating heat not from the sun, but from memory, from the constant, gentle reminder of Saturn's presence. That warmth fuels the geysers that rise from Enceladus's south pole, icy plumes that spray into space, carrying water, salt, and even organic molecules into the void. These particles join the E-ring, orbiting alongside their source, becoming part of the great circulating story. Gravity doesn't let them go. It lifts them, carries them, and lays them into new patterns. In every particle, the memory of where it came from lingers, written in the arc it follows, in the curve of its return. This quiet remembering continues across the whole system. Titan, so large it might have become a planet in another life, moves slowly through its thick orange sky. Its orbit, too, is not still. It is pulled by Saturn, shaped by gravity, nudged by ancient tugs that trace back to the early solar system. Inside Titan, an ocean stirs. Beneath its icy crust, tides rise and fall, not with sound, but with rhythm. Gravity moves through liquid and stone alike, reminding Titan of Saturn's pull and Saturn of Titan's mass. Even Saturn's rings are etched with memory. The gaps and divisions are not empty spaces, but pauses in a sentence. They mark places where moons have passed, where resonance has pressed its fingers gently into the structure, leaving spaces F. Stillness among the motion. The Cassini division, wide and mysterious, is one such echo, a place where the gravity of Mimas pulls regularly on ring particles, clearing a path through sheer consistency. Not by force but by remembering, a steady call, a repeated note in a song sung in orbit. The shepherd moons, too, carry this remembering. Prometheus and Pandora glide along either side of the F-ring, shaping its narrow thread of ice. As they pass, they tug at the particles, drawing tendrils outward, pulling pieces along, then letting go. These interactions are small, often invisible, but they accumulate, they sculpt, they guide. Over time, they create structure, just as memories shape identity, shaping what stays and what falls away. And then there are the moons with scars. Epetus, with its dark and light hemispheres, recalls its own strange past in color. One side is coated in darkness, the other in brightness. Scientists believe it has swept up dark material from outside itself, evidence of an encounter remembered not in words but in dust. The moon carries that contrast forward, orbiting on a tilted path far from the rest, silent but marked. Its orbit is a memory, too, an old agreement with Saturn that it still honors. Some memories are more chaotic. The tiny irregular moons, tumbling unpredictably, seem to defy pattern, yet even their wild paths are shaped by past encounters, a close brush, a distant capture, a collision long ago that altered a spin, changed a tilt, added a twist. Gravity, again, is the keeper, not of order but of consequence. Not everything is neat, but everything is connected. Cassini, during its long mission, helped us read these motions like language. It mapped the gravity fields of Saturn's moons, revealing hidden oceans, unexpected densities, delicate balances. It taught us to see gravity not just as pull, but as communication, as a story told in curves and shifts. When a moon's orbit wobbles, when its speed drifts, when its surface tugs back, these are not accidents. They are responses. They are memories resurfacing in the body of a world. And Earth, too, is part of this memory. Our instruments, our minds, our questions, all orbit Saturn in their own way. We send our curiosity across space and wait for gravity to return an answer. Sometimes it comes as a faint change in motion, sometimes as a whisper in magnetic fields, sometimes only as silence. But even silence is part of the remembering. It is space being held, a page waiting to be filled, a gravity well into which future understanding may one day fall. And so in the great stillness beyond Earth, Saturn spins, its rings circling, its moons dancing their remembered steps. Nothing here forgets. The past is not behind, it is beneath, within, surrounding every orbit. Gravity does not erase, it holds, it adjusts, it reshapes gently without force. Like memory softened by time, gravity keeps everything in motion, never letting go, never pulling too tight, only guiding, only reminding. And through that patient guidance, the story continues. Every loop a line, every resonance a refrain, every shadow and shimmer a chapter in a book whose pages turn without sound. And yet we read it. Because in Saturn's gravity, we don't just find motion, we find memory. Now let us drift into the quiet core of gravity's story, the part where it is no longer about orbits or mass, but about meaning. Saturn, with its many moons and shimmering rings, has long held the gaze of those who look upward, not just because it is beautiful, but because it moves with purpose. Everything that circles Saturn carries not just its own weight, but the memory of the forces that shaped it. These aren't random movements, they are echoes. Traces of long-ago beginnings still unfolding in slow spirals through space. Look at how the rings shimmer, not just with ice and light, but with rhythm. Their waves, some caused by distant moons, ripple outward like the memory of a touch. Scientists call these patterns density waves and bending waves, but you might think of them more simply as frozen music. Each ring, each particle remembers where it has been and who has passed nearby. A moon tugged here, a particle collided there. The aftermath is written into the structure itself, movement as memory, silence as story. And the moons, large and small, remember in shape. Tethys carries a massive scar across its face, a canyon so long it stretches halfway around the moon. Perhaps it formed as Tethys cooled and shrank. Perhaps something struck long ago. Either way, the moon remembers not in words, but in stone. Dione, too, is etched with bright streaks across its surface, like faded writing. They are fractures and faults, frozen in place, a record of forces no longer present but never forgotten. Even Saturn itself remembers in its clouds. The storms that churn in its atmosphere rise, rotate, and dissolve, but their patterns linger. The hexagon at Saturn's north pole is one of the most striking examples, a six-sided jet stream circling the pole, stable for decades, perhaps centuries. No one fully understands how it formed, but there it stays, turning slowly, whispering of balance, of structure, of a memory so large we can only glimpse it from afar. Gravity is what holds all this together, not just physically but poetically. It does not erase, it absorbs. When something new enters Saturn's domain, gravity does not push it away. It invites it into a pattern, a path, a future shaped by the past, and in that way it mirrors something very human. We too are shaped by what we have been near. We too are tugged by the unseen. We carry the memory of places and people long gone, and their influence shows in the way we move, the way we choose, the way we become. Perhaps that's why Saturn feels so familiar, so comforting, even from billions of kilometers away. It reflects back a version of ourselves not defined by noise or urgency, but by grace, by long, slow becoming. The rings will not last forever. They are already drifting inward, raining softly into the planet. The moons may shift, merge, or break apart. Even the shape of Saturn may change, but gravity will continue to remember. It will carry the imprints forward, folding them into new orbits, new patterns, new balances. Cassini's end is one such imprint. Its final descent, quiet and controlled, added its presence to the long memory of Saturn. As it fell into the clouds, its atoms scattered into the planet's atmosphere, becoming part of what it had studied. Gravity held it until the very end, not to possess, but to welcome. Cassini became a memory in motion, one more story orbiting in silence. And now, when we gaze at Saturn's image, a globe wrapped in golden rings, flanked by distant moons, we are not just seeing a planet. We are seeing a memory machine, a recorder of time that does not write in ink but in motion, a body that holds space for what has passed and gently carries it forward, orbit by orbit. In a universe so vast and changing, gravity is our tether. It allows things to endure without staying still, to change without forgetting, to move without becoming lost. Saturn is not just a planet in that equation, it is a teacher. It shows us that remembering can be soft, that influence does not require force, that presence, quiet and steady, is enough to shape a world. And so we end where we began, not with a sound, but with a turning. Saturn continues to spin, its moons continue to orbit, and gravity continues to remember. Even the smallest stone in the ring, even the faintest arc in the sky, holds a story worth tracing. And if we watch long enough, gently enough, we might begin to feel the same thing within ourselves, a quiet pull, a soft memory, a sense that we too are part of the great turning, and that we too are being held. There is a kind of beauty that only becomes visible in the presence of light. But perhaps more mysterious, more tender, is the beauty of shadow, the silent companion that follows, outlines, and reveals by contrast. Around Saturn, a planet known for its brilliance and rings that gleam like icy halos, shadows are just as alive as the light. They do not stand still. They move, they stretch, they orbit. And in their quiet movement, they whisper truths the light cannot tell alone. Shadows fall across Saturn's face like drifting curtains. Cast by moons, they slide across the clouds in long ellipses, slow and silent. These shadows, though weightless, carry presence. As a moon passes in front of the sun from Saturn's perspective, it creates a dark spot that glides across the planet's atmosphere. It is not a permanent mark, not a scar, but for a time it is a visitor, a passage, a quiet moment of contrast that leaves no sound but lingers in memory. The rings, too, cast shadows. As Saturn tilts in its orbit around the sun, the shadows of the rings change. Sometimes they stretch far across the planet's body, painting soft lines of darkness onto its swirling clouds. Other times they are so thin they almost vanish. These shifting shadows mark the seasons of Saturn, telling time not with hours or days, but with tilt and distance, with the long curve of a planet's year. They are the quiet calendar of light's absence. And in return, the rings catch shadows as well. Moons passing nearby cast their silhouettes onto the bands of ice and rock, creating sudden dark marks that glide along the curves like silent dancers. Even Saturn itself casts a shadow across its rings, a broad, soft darkness that grows and shrinks depending on its position to the sun. The rings respond like a sundial made of frozen dust, turning ever so slowly as the light shifts. These moments, these orbiting shadows, are not accidents. They are part of a greater rhythm, a choreography of presence and absence. Moons orbiting light, shadows orbiting moons, planets turning and casting silhouettes into space. It is a layered dance, each motion creating new patterns of dark and light. In this performance, nothing is still, and everything depends on something else. Without light, there is no shadow. Without shadow, light cannot reveal its full shape. On Enceladus, where geysers shoot into space from cracks near the South Pole, the shadows they cast on nearby surfaces change with each orbit. The icy plumes, though nearly transparent, catch the sunlight just enough to throw long, faint silhouettes across the moon's own surface or against the distant ring particles they help sustain. It is a reminder that even the lightest things, even mist, can carry shadow, that even what seems invisible leaves a trace. Titan, wrapped in a thick orange haze, rarely sees a sharp shadow at all. Its atmosphere scatters the light, softening every edge. But when a rare eclipse occurs, when Saturn passes between Titan and the sun, the moon darkens not quickly but gradually, as if entering a dream. The sunlight dims and a subtle twilight falls, not full darkness but a hush, a pause in brightness, an orbiting shadow, large and slow, wrapping Titan in its quiet shape. These moments do not interrupt Saturn's system, they are part of it. Shadows do not stop motion, they accompany it, they mark movement with softness, and in doing so they help define space, they help define time, they give meaning to light by offering contrast, they help us see what is there by showing what is not. Cassini, as it orbited Saturn, often captured these passing shadows. One of its most haunting images shows the planet backlit by the sun, its body dark and outlined by the brilliance of its rings. In that photograph, Earth is just a tiny dot, a pale speck, barely visible. But in the shadow of Saturn, we could see it, because light, when it bends and spills around darkness, reveals the smallest things. In the silhouette, details come forward. Perhaps that is what shadows are for, not to hide, but to reveal differently, not to erase, but to reframe. When a moon passes in front of the sun, when a ring casts a curve of darkness across Saturn's clouds, we see new shapes, new textures. Light shows us what is bright, shadow shows us what is real. Both are needed, both are part of the dance. And so around Saturn, shadows orbit light in endless companionship. They do not fear one another, they do not compete. They move together, defining each other, softening each other. In a world of frozen rings and silent moons, it is not only light that matters, but the places where light steps aside and silence and shadow take the stage. Let us move more gently now, deeper into the world where shadows do not just fall, they travel, stretch, and curve with meaning. Around Saturn, shadows are not simple silhouettes. They are companions to motion, riding on the backs of moons and across the wide bands of rings like silent reflections. They speak in shape and shift, and though they leave no sound behind, they offer a new kind of language, one made of contrast, of time, of the delicate balance between presence and absence. Consider the strange elegance of the moon Prometheus, a narrow, lumpy world that travels just inside the F-ring. As it orbits, its gravitational pull disturbs the ring's particles, creating curls and streamers that grow and twist like frost on glass. When sunlight falls just right, Prometheus casts a moving shadow across these disturbances, dark smudges that move with grace across the icy threads. The ring is altered not only by the moon's touch, but by the shape of its shadow. A second fingerprint, darker, softer, laid over the first. Other moons, like Epimetheus and Janus, share nearly the same orbit, swapping places every few years in a celestial exchange as smooth as breath. Their shadows, too, orbit with them, sometimes trailing, sometimes crossing paths, sometimes overlapping in a quiet eclipse only the rings can feel. These dances are invisible from Earth, but they leave trails, thin, darkened lines on icy surfaces and in the wake of particles stirred from sleep. The moons keep moving, so do their shadows, neither ever truly alone. Even Saturn's own shape creates shadows that reach out across its world. Its massive body blocks sunlight, casting long curves of darkness that sweep over the rings like the shadow of a mountain passing across a still lake. These shadows are not still, nor are they sharp. They grow and shrink with Saturn's tilt, with its seasons, with the rhythm of its 29-year journey around the sun. They are the breath of time itself, rising and falling in cycles older than human memory. Shadows mark these seasons more than color or temperature. They remind us that even in a system far from Earth, time passes with grace. The equinox on Saturn, when the sun shines directly over its equator, is especially beautiful. For a few brief months, the rings lie edge-on to the sun, casting almost no shadow at all. The planet appears clean, unmarked. But just before and after this moment, shadows grow long and lean, stretching like stories across the cloud tops. These are the transitions that tell time not by ticking, but by tilting, not by brightness, but by where the darkness lies. On the moon Iapetus, whose surface is half dark, half bright, the concept of shadow takes on an even deeper shape. As it rotates, one side reflects sunlight with brilliance while the other absorbs it in stillness. The line between them, the terminator, is not a simple boundary but a soft veil between worlds. Even when the sun is high, Iapetus carries its own shadow along, not just behind it but within it, a contrast baked into its form. It orbits Saturn like a metaphor in motion. This duality, the coexistence of light and shadow, is not unique to Iapetus. It lives in every object that turns. Every moon that rotates shows a face to the sun and one to the stars. Every ring particle spins, catching light on one side and hiding it on the other. Even Saturn itself glows with bands of sunlight while its far side darkens into silence. This constant exchange between light and shadow is not a flaw of the system. It is the system. It is how things are seen, how things are shaped. Cassini saw this truth often in its long orbit. When it slipped behind Saturn, capturing the planet in silhouette, it revealed structures never seen in direct light. The rings' faint outer arcs, the soft haze of distant moons, even the glow of Saturn's night side lit by sunlight reflected off the rings, these became visible only when the planet blocked the sun. The darkness became a lens, the shadow became a guide. And isn't that often true in life, that only when something is shadowed do we begin to notice the light around it? That absence creates shape, that silence allows voice. On Saturn, these truths become clear. Every orbit is both seen and unseen. Every motion leaves a trail in brightness and a ghost in darkness. One cannot exist without the other. The rings themselves, in all their brilliance, also host shadows within. Clumps and waves within the rings block light from below, casting patterns across deeper layers. These shifting shades are soft maps of structure, showing where particles gather, where waves rise, where a moon has passed and stirred the sea of ice. We often call the rings bright, and they are, but within them, the shadows reveal their texture. In this distant world, shadows are not warnings, they are reminders, that every object touched by light also holds darkness, that every turning world carries with it a twin, a darker outline, a softer version of itself following behind. And rather than fear this companion, Saturn embraces it. The planet moves not to escape its shadow, but to carry it, to shape it, to let it dance across clouds and rings like ink across silk. So let us not rush to turn on every light. Let us sit for a while with the orbits of shadow, with the moons that pass silently in front of the sun, casting slow-moving eclipses, with the rings that darken at their edges as the year turns. Let us remember that shadow is not the end of light, it is the continuation. It is the reflection of movement, the memory of brightness, the partner of every path. Now we reach the quiet heart of it, the truth that shadows are not mistakes, nor are they intrusions. They are part of the design. They orbit with the same patience as the moons, as the rings, as the planet itself. Around Saturn, nothing travels alone. Every object, no matter how small or distant, carries with it a companion shadow. And that shadow, far from being a mark of absence, is a presence all its own. It curves when the moon curves. It softens when the light fades. It is a dance partner to motion, echoing every gesture with grace. Saturn's vast rings, bright as frozen rivers, would seem flawless from afar. But up close we see the shadows tucked within, the divisions and edges, the grooves carved by passing moons, the thin lines where light no longer reaches. These are not imperfections, they are signatures, proof that things have passed this way, that orbits are not silent, that movement leaves its trace. Even the gaps, the Encke, the Cassini, the Keeler, are memories cast in shadow, places where light is lessened not by absence but by history. The moons know this story intimately. They do not just travel across space, they carry their shadows across surfaces, leaving temporary marks on Saturn's clouds or dancing along the ring's curves. When the planet turns slowly and a moon casts its shadow across the clouds, it's like a quiet brushstroke across the atmosphere. Not permanent, not loud, but meaningful. A gesture that says, I was here, I passed, I left my shape behind for a moment before moving on. Sometimes shadows fall on the moons themselves. During eclipses, Saturn's massive body blocks the sun, plunging the moons into sudden night. The temperature drops and the ice settles into deeper stillness. The moons do not panic. They do not rush to escape the darkness. They wait, they count. In orbit, trusting the light will return, and it does every time. The shadow passes, the glow returns, the dance resumes. It is not resistance, it is rhythm. Even the smallest fragments in Saturn's rings know this rhythm. Each particle spins, casting a tiny shadow on the ones beneath it. From a distance, this creates texture, like sunlight falling through leaves, dappling the surface in speckles of darkness. The rings shimmer because of the light, but they deepen because of shadow. Together, they create not a single image, but a living one, always moving, always layered. Cassini, in its final years, captured these delicate moments, the flicker of a shadow across a moon's surface, the slow crawl of darkness across the edge of the planet. In these images, we don't just see celestial mechanics, we see intimacy, relationship, the way one body touches another without contact, the way light and shadow write to one another across vast spaces. And when Cassini itself slipped into Saturn's shadow, something remarkable happened. It turned its cameras back toward the sun, capturing the planet as a silhouette. In that shadowed view, new details emerged, the pale arc of distant rings, the soft halo around the planet's limb, and far beyond, a tiny blue speck. Earth, a shadowed Earth scene from the darkness of another world. In that moment, it became clear that even we orbit light, even we cast shadows, even we are part of the story. Shadows, then, are not barriers, they are bridges. They connect light to form, presence to absence, motion to memory. They help us understand that space is not just filled with objects, but with relationships, with moments of crossing, with pauses and eclipses, with the soft veils that move across rings and clouds and remind us that not everything bright must always shine. And maybe that's what Saturn teaches us best, not only how to look at the stars, but how to see what moves between them, how to honor the contrast, how to celebrate the quiet paths that drift through brightness, marking the passage of time not with noise but with gentle interruption, with the silent sweep of shadow over light. So when you next see Saturn through a telescope, shining in the dark sky, know that you are seeing more than a planet. You are seeing a world of orbiting dancers and the shadows that follow them. You are witnessing a universe that honors both brilliance and stillness, both the seen and the softly hidden, and you are watching a kind of truth that does not need to shout to be understood. Because here in the realm of rings and moons, shadows are never lost. They are folded into motion. They orbit with purpose. They pass and return, and in their passing they show us that even the quietest things can leave the deepest impressions. That light is beautiful, but it is shadow that gives it shape. Out in the far dark reaches of the solar system, where the light of the sun softens into a faint breath, small stones drift in ancient silence. They do not shine, they do not sing, they are cold and quiet, orbiting planets like Saturn in long, slow arcs, and yet we name them. We give them titles drawn from myth and memory, from poets and gods and whispered stories older than maps. These names, simple though they may seem, are threads of connection, a way for us to reach across space and say, I see you. Saturn has over 100 such stones, moons we call them, though many are hardly larger than mountains. Each one has its own path, its own shape, its own age. Some spin fast, others slowly. Some are smooth with ice, others pocked with scars from collisions long past, but all of them have been noticed. All of them have been claimed not with conquest, but with language. We call them Pan, Atlas, Pandora, Hyperion. We speak their names in classrooms and control rooms, write them on star charts and screens. And in doing so, we give meaning to the silent. There is a kind of gentleness in this naming, a quiet reverence, because these moons did not ask to be seen, they do not perform. They drift in and out of Saturn's shadow, caught in gravity's arms, untouched by sunlight for years at a time. But when we name them, we acknowledge them. We draw them into our circle of understanding. A name becomes a bridge, a way to care for something far away, to include it in the family of the known. Some names come from ancient mythology. Saturn itself is named for the Roman god of time, and its moons echo that mythos, Dione, Tethys, Rhea, Janus. Others reach deeper still, pulling from the titans of Greek legend, the beings who ruled before the gods. There's poetry in that, naming frozen rocks after timeless beings. It's as if we are giving these cold stones their rightful place among the immortals, their own quiet throne in the heavens. And then there are the newer names, drawn from Norse, Inuit, and Gallic myths. As more moons are discovered, we turn to wider stories, honoring cultures whose voices echo through snow and sea. And fire, moons like Scathach and Suttungr, Cyrenac and Tarvos. Their names carry the weight of lands where stars burn low on the horizon, and silence is thick as ice. In this way, naming becomes not just a gesture of science, but of inclusion, of shared sky. Even the smallest moons, those no wider than a city, are named with care. S/2004 S12, for instance, awaits a formal title, yet already it circles Saturn with purpose. In time it will earn its name, and that name will join the quiet chorus of Saturn's family, a new word added to the language of orbit, a new stone given its story. Naming is not a claim of ownership. It is a recognition. We name because we notice, because we wonder, because we need a way to hold distant things gently in our thoughts. When we name a moon, we're not drawing it down to Earth. We are lifting ourselves toward it. We are saying, you are part of us now, even if you never know it. Cassini helped us name many of these moons. It flew past them, photographed their craters and curves, mapped their surfaces with instruments more sensitive than any eye. Through its lens, we saw details we had never seen before, ridges shaped by time, valleys etched by cold. We learned their rhythms, their temperatures, their habits, and in learning we named, in naming we remembered. The act of naming also creates a kind of intimacy. Suddenly, a dot of light becomes a place. A number becomes a personality. We say Enceladus and think of icy geysers. We say Titan and imagine lakes of methane. The names collect meaning. They become vessels filled not only with data but with wonder. They are the beginnings of stories, some we tell ourselves, others we hope to discover. And perhaps one day we will walk on these stones, set foot on their cold, solid ground. Perhaps a rover will hum across their surface, carving letters into dust. But even if we never go, the names remain, floating in the dark, circling Saturn like beads on a string, each one glowing with the light of attention. Each one a reminder that even in the vastness we can still form connection. We can still speak across silence. So as Saturn turns and its moons circle slowly through the quiet, we continue to name. Not to possess, but to honor, to remember, to care. In a universe that often feels too large, too fast, too empty, we draw close to these small companions not with ships, but with syllables, with soft-spoken names that orbit alongside them, whispering gently through the dark. Let us drift deeper now into the emotional gravity of what it means to give a name to a world you may never touch. In science, names are tools, ways to catalog, to organize, to remember. But in the quiet space around Saturn, they become something gentler, something more human. When we name a moon that glides silently through darkness, we are not just identifying it. We are saying that it matters, that even the smallest speck in the outer reaches deserves a story. Think of Epimetheus, a small, potato-shaped moon that shares nearly the same orbit as its sibling, Janus. The two pass each other in a slow gravitational ballet, trading places every few years in a celestial rhythm that feels almost choreographed. They were once numbers, now they are characters. Janus, named for the two-faced Roman god of beginnings and endings, watches both past and future. Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, trails behind, humble and quiet. In their names, we find meaning beyond their mass and motion. We find myth, emotion, and a kind of kinship. When astronomers first spot a new object, it is often given a designation, a string of letters and numbers, a temporary tag. But soon, that distant stone receives a name, one chosen with care from ancient stories. It's a ritual as old as stargazing itself. We look up, we see, we wonder, and then we name. This sequence repeats again and again, connecting us to the sky in a quiet rhythm of recognition. And why do we choose myths? Perhaps because myths are our earliest attempts to understand what we cannot explain. They are filled with longing, with drama, with beauty. To name a frozen moon after a forgotten god is to say, you too belong in our story. It is a way of weaving distant ice and rock into the fabric of our shared imagination. A moon called Surtur, after a fire giant from Norse myth, glides through the dark not just as a body in orbit, but as a flame of memory carried forward. In this way, the moons become a kind of library, a celestial archive of human dreams. Each name holds echoes of stories told by firelight passed through generations. Names from Inuit myth drift beside Greek titans. Names from Celtic lore spin alongside Roman deities. This blending of cultural memory across the sky creates a silent chorus of voices. The sky does not favor one language over another. It listens to all. Sometimes, names are chosen to reflect not just ancient story, but new hope. In 2023, when Saturn's moon count officially surpassed Jupiter's, astronomers celebrated not with competition, but with wonder. Each newly discovered moon was a chance to tell another story, to add another thread to the great cosmic fabric. The act of naming became a form of celebration, a ritual of welcome. Come into our awareness, small one, we see you now. The moons themselves do not know they've been named. They continue in their ancient orbits, unbothered by human words, but the act still matters to us. It helps us form connection across distance. It allows us to trace patterns not only in space but in meaning. When a scientist maps the orbit of Fornjot or Bergelmir, they are not just charting data, they are drawing constellations of care, placing stories like stars across the void. And over time, names accumulate meaning. Consider Titan, once a myth, then a moon, now a world of interest, with lakes and weather and chemistry that echoes early Earth. Titan now conjures not just mythology, but exploration, possibility, even future colonization. The name has grown, layered with decades of curiosity and study. It began as a whisper, it is now a promise. In schools, children learn these names and repeat them with wonder. Not just Saturn, but Enceladus, Mimas, Rhea, each one a doorway into the universe, a starting point for questions, a bridge between a young mind and the stars. The syllables become part of their vocabulary of wonder, part of the way they think about the world beyond. Even artists, poets, and musicians find inspiration in these distant stones. A painting titled Phoebe, a song called Tethys Rising, a poem whispered to Pan, the shepherd moon. Through these creative echoes, the moons find life not only in orbit but in imagination. Naming becomes a seed for creation. It lets something vast and cold become personal, touchable, felt. In all of this, we see the deep truth that naming is a form of love, a quiet, reverent kind, the kind that doesn't need ownership or proximity, just attention, just care. To name a stone circling a gas giant 2 billion kilometers away is to say, you are not forgotten, you are part of this with us. And so Saturn turns, cloaked in rings and moons, and Earth turns with it, naming as it goes. The stars do not need our language, but perhaps we do. Perhaps in giving names to these distant places, we are really naming our own longing, our need to belong in the story of the sky. Now let us gently bring the story to its close, not with answers but with soft reflection. Around Saturn, the moons keep turning. Their names, once whispered from myth, now orbit in silence, attached to stones that may never feel a footprint or hear a voice. And yet the act of naming remains, a thread of connection stretching from this small, blue world to those distant specks of rock and ice. Names, in the end, are not just labels. They are lanterns, tiny lights we send into the dark, hoping they will be seen. There is something deeply human about naming the unknown. It is not driven only by science. It is driven by the heart, by the ache of distance, by the longing to reach. We name to remember, to wonder, to belong. When we give a name to a moon orbiting Saturn, we are saying you are part of this great unfolding. You are not forgotten. Even if we never touch you, even if we never hear your voice, we have spoken your name, and that is a kind of embrace. The names live on Earth, printed in dusty books, typed into glowing databases, written on whiteboards in classrooms. They live in minds, in dreams, in childhood posters of the solar system. They live in the quiet awe of someone looking up through a telescope, whispering Titan or Enceladus for the first time and feeling a sense of quiet kinship with something unimaginably far away. That moment of saying the name is a thread pulled tight across space. And it works in both directions. When we name the moons, we also name something in ourselves, our curiosity, our smallness, our hunger for beauty. The moons of Saturn become mirrors, tiny frozen ones, reflecting not just sunlight but our questions, our poems, our patience. What we call them becomes a story not only about what they are, but who we are in their presence. Sometimes we return to the same names. The myths repeat. The names echo across different skies. Jupiter has a moon named Callisto, so does a crater on Saturn's Rhea. Mars has a Deimos. One day we may use the name again for something else. And that's all right, because names are not about ownership, they're about recognition. They're about layering meaning over time, like rings stacking around a planet. Each name holds echoes of the past and potential for the future. And yet not every moon is named. Some still bear only numbers. S/2004 S24, S2019 S1. They wait quietly in the archives of astronomers, tiny specks seen in the corner of a frame, glimpsed briefly as they sweep past Saturn's glow. For now they are unknown, but in time they too will earn their scent. Ories, their names will be chosen, their letters spoken aloud by someone who wonders what it might be like to drift in the outer dark, caught between gravity and time. Cassini is gone now, its final dive into Saturn's clouds complete, but the names it helped give remain, like seeds scattered in orbit. We speak of Daphnis and Calypso, of Polydeuces and Methone, and they feel real, not just data points, but characters in a sky-sized novel. Each time we say their names, we add a line to that story, a new verse in a song made of stone and silence. And maybe in some far future, those names will be spoken again by someone standing on Titan's frozen soil, or flying low past Ipetus in a quiet spacecraft. Maybe the names will be carved into instruments, into walls, into stories told by firelight once more. Maybe a child yet to be born will look out through a dome on Enceladus and say, "That one's Tethys. I learned about her in school." The name then becomes a thread of continuity, a way for wonder to travel through generations. But even if no one ever visits, the act of naming continues to echo. Because it's not about reaching the moons, it's about reaching into the unknown with open hands, about weaving our presence into the quiet of the cosmos, about letting even a stone feel seen. And in doing so, we become part of the dance. A planet orbits, a moon follows, and somewhere far away, a voice whispers its name, adding warmth to the cold. So let the names remain. Let them circle Saturn forever, gentle and weightless like snowflakes that never melt. Let them drift through the black, touched only by starlight and memory. Let them remind us that in the vastness of space, it is possible to speak softly and still be heard, that even silence responds to care, that a name, when spoken with wonder, can light the dark. Far beyond the reach of any one sun, beyond even the familiar arms of our Milky Way, there exists a kind of cosmic sleep, a slow forgetting that unfolds across billions of years. Galaxies, those grand spirals and quiet ellipses of starlight, move through the universe not just as clusters of stars but as keepers of memory. And yet, like ancient minds stretched thin by time, they too begin to forget. Not all at once, but softly, quietly, as stars drift from where they were born, and old patterns melt into new. In the beginning, a galaxy remembers clearly. Stars are born together in clouds of dust and gas, ignited in the same cradle of gravity and light. They move in patterns, flowing in graceful orbits, drawn by the shared pull of their common center. These stars are siblings. They know where they came from. They travel together like a flock of birds stretched across the sky, glowing softly in unison. But the universe is old and time does not stand still. Stars, though vast and luminous, are not fixed. They wander, they pull on one another, they sway from their original orbits. Some are nudged outward by the gravity of passing neighbors. Others are pulled inward toward the galactic core. Over millions of years, the flock disperses. What was once a tight-knit family becomes scattered feathers on the wind, and the galaxy begins to forget. Astronomers call this process stellar migration. It's not fast, it's not violent, it's like erosion, gentle, persistent, and inevitable. A star that was born in one arm of the galaxy may, after a billion years, be found halfway across the disk, its original birthplace lost to time. It still shines, it still burns with the fire of fusion, but it has forgotten its home. And as stars move, so too does the shape of the galaxy shift. Spirals bend, arms blur, clusters dissolve. The great design that once seemed so clear becomes fogged by motion. Memory fades not because something has been destroyed, but because the parts have drifted too far to recognize one another. It is the sleep of time, not the silence of death. Even the stars themselves age. A bright young star that once pulsed with ultraviolet fire dims over time, changing color, growing cooler. Its light softens, its surface calms. It enters the twilight of its life, no longer a beacon of new beginnings, but a slow-burning ember. It remembers in the way an elder remembers, with warmth but with distance. The galactic center holds onto memory the longest. Dense, massive, and full of gravity's grip, it anchors stars for longer than the outer arms can. But even here the past is not eternal. Black holes stir the stars around them. Orbits wobble, heat rises, and the stories that began at the heart slowly unravel. It is not a loss, it is a letting go. Imagine looking up at a sky filled with stars, so many that the darkness between them barely seems real. Now imagine that some of those stars were born together in the same nursery long ago, but they no longer remember. Their paths have drifted. Their light has traveled across such vast space that they no longer see each other, and yet they are still connected, not by memory but by origin, a forgotten past still glowing faintly in every pulse of light. Sometimes we on Earth look for those hidden families, those lost stellar siblings. We trace the chemical fingerprints of stars, searching for ones with the same mixture of metals and hydrogen born from the same cloud. When we find them, we call them solar siblings. They remind us that memory can be hidden deep, not in the shape of motion, but in the bones of the star itself, a kind of ancient DNA glowing across space. But most stars will never be reunited. Their names, if they ever had names, are lost. Their connections have faded. The galaxy sleeps, and in that sleep it forgets not only where things began, but how they were once arranged. Patterns dissolve, clusters fade, spirals stretch thin. Memory is not destroyed, it simply becomes part of the dust. And yet within this forgetting there is beauty, because even as galaxies lose their shape, they become something new. When two galaxies merge, as they often do, their stars mingle, their shapes warp, tides of starlight ripple across space. What was once two becomes one, not in clarity but in complexity. This is not the memory of a single story, it is the weaving of many. The forgetting of boundaries allows new forms to emerge. The universe does not mourn this forgetting. It carries on, creating new stars from old gas, forming new galaxies from ancient collisions. And in every newborn star there is the seed of a new memory, fresh, bright, and unburdened by the past. For a while it will remember where it came from. It will orbit with its siblings. It will shine with purpose. But in time it too will drift, and the galaxy will continue its sleep. Perhaps in a way the forgetting is not a flaw. It is the breath of the cosmos, the slow inhale and exhale of gravity and time. It is how change happens, how complexity grows, how stories evolve. And in the silence of deep space, where light takes millions of years to arrive, that sleep is not empty. It is full of motion, full of slow, gentle forgetting that leads always to something new. Let us drift deeper now into the dreamscape of time, where galaxies carry their own quiet burdens, not of pain, but of distance, of drifting, of the fading connections that once made their structures whole. The Milky Way itself, with its bright arms stretched across the dark, tells a story written in starlight and slowly erased by motion. It was not always the shape we see today. It is changing still, and in its change it forgets. We look at spiral galaxies and admire their beauty, the swirls, the symmetry, the arms sweeping outward like wind-blown petals. But those arms are not fixed, they are not solid structures. They are patterns, waves of density moving through stars like ripples through water. And stars, unlike droplets, do not stay still. They pass through these waves, flowing in and out like dancers who never quite return to the same step. Over billions of years, the arms dissolve, reform, fade. The grand design we once traced begins to blur, and the galaxy forgets what it once looked like. Between these stars, clouds of gas drift, cooling, collapsing, sometimes igniting into new suns. But even this renewal comes with forgetting. When a new star forms, it may hold atoms from 10,000 ancestors, stars that lived and died long before, their elements scattered into space. In that stardust is memory, yes, but not one the star itself can hold. It is memory rewritten, reorganized, rebreathed into something else. The new star has no knowledge of the supernovae that shaped it. It burns brightly, unaware of its ancient inheritance. And what of the stars that drift beyond the edge, In the outskirts of galaxies, there are halo stars, old, quiet, often moving on orbits that take them far from the galactic plane. Some of them are nearly as old as the universe itself. They are relics of a time before spiral arms, before organized motion. Their presence is like a whisper from a forgotten chapter. They orbit slowly like monks walking the perimeter of a long-forgotten temple. They remember in silence. Sometimes galaxies collide, not with fire and explosion, but with a long, slow embrace that takes hundreds of millions of years. Stars rarely strike one another, but their orbits are thrown into disarray. Arms are stretched, shapes are pulled like taffy. In the aftermath, the two galaxies merge into a new whole, but the original forms, their arms, their clusters, their central bulges, may vanish. In this merging, memory becomes muddled. The old identity is gone, replaced by a new being of blended histories. The stars still shine, but they no longer know what they were. And yet astronomers read the faint echoes of these forgotten collisions. They trace trails of stars stretching across space, tidal streams that arc behind the galaxy like the long scarf of someone who passed by long ago. These stellar rivers are leftovers from galaxies consumed. Deep by larger ones, their stars pulled apart, their shapes undone. They are not memories kept alive, they are memories unraveling, threads of what used to be, still glinting in the dark. Even within the Milky Way, there are signs of this ancient forgetting. The Sagittarius dwarf galaxy, once its own small home of stars, has been torn by our galaxy's gravity. Its stars now blend into ours. Some are still identifiable, like leaves caught in a slow current, but most will dissolve into the larger stream of motion, indistinguishable from their neighbors. This is how galaxies grow, not by conquest, but by absorption, and in doing so, they forget. Our own sun may have started life in a small stellar cluster, but that cluster is long gone. Its sibling stars have wandered across the galaxy, scattered by motion and time. Somewhere out there, a star nearly identical to ours still shines, born of the same cloud, bathed in the same early light. But it will never know us, we may never know it. Their bond has faded into the general hum of the galactic disk. What was once shared is now unnamed. And still the stars keep moving. The galaxy rotates not as a single wheel, but as a layered, complex symphony of motion. The inner parts move faster, the outer parts lag behind. Like dancers spinning at different speeds, they create a pattern that never repeats. The original configuration, if there ever was one, becomes unknowable. The positions blur, the rhythm stretches thin, and so the galaxy forgets. But perhaps this forgetting is not a loss, but a kind of evolution. When stars forget their birthplaces, they also begin new stories. They settle into new neighborhoods, affect new surroundings. They contribute to the shape of the galaxy in a different way. Memory, after all, is not the only path to meaning. Presence matters too. What a star does now, how it glows, where it moves, what it touches, becomes part of the ever-changing identity of the whole. And so the sleep of the stars is not empty. It is filled with soft exchanges, with gentle partings, with new unions. The forgetting of galaxies is not a silence, but a song played so slowly that its notes stretch beyond a single lifetime. We, looking up from Earth, hear only a whisper, but in that whisper we feel the weight of time, the calm of motion, the peace of a universe that lets go and continues. Now let us follow the last movements of this galactic lullaby to where time slows and the universe hums with soft memory. The stars have wandered, the patterns have blurred, the spiral arms have softened like wind-blown trails in sand. What remains is not a perfect shape, not a frozen map of where things once were, but a feeling, a presence carried by gravity and light. In this final place, the galaxy does not resist its forgetting. It embraces it, folding into a new rhythm with every quiet turn. Look now at elliptical galaxies. They are not born this way. They begin, many of them, as spirals, alive with arms and clusters and bright newborn stars. But after long ages of mergers and mingling, they round out, lose their world structure and grow smooth. Their stars age, their gas is spent, new stars no longer form. They glow in amber light like the pages of an ancient book that no longer writes new chapters. These are the galaxies that have forgotten how to remember, and yet they are still here. Still whole, still drifting gently through the dark. Astronomers call these places red and dead, but perhaps that is too harsh. They are not dead, they are resting. Their light has shifted to warmer hues, not because they are gone, but because they are finished with certain things. They no longer blaze with the bright blue of new suns, but they offer something else: stillness, patience, a final exhale after eons of change. In them we see not loss, but completion. Even as galaxies forget, they do not vanish. Their starlight continues its journey across space, reaching eyes and instruments and minds far away. When we look at a distant galaxy, we are seeing it not as it is, but as it was millions, even billions of years ago. In this way, the light itself becomes a record, a soft voice from the past saying, "This is who I was." The galaxy may have changed since then, may have merged or faded or disappeared entirely. But the light still carries the memory forward, across time, into the present. And perhaps this is the universe's secret gift, that nothing is truly lost. Memory may fade in the motion of stars, but light travels on. A galaxy that no longer remembers its beginning can still be seen by us as it once was. We become its memory, we hold its shape, we trace its arms, we give its name a place in our minds and maps. In this way, the forgetting of galaxies is not the end of their stories. It is a handing over, a trust placed in us. And we, in turn, are not separate from this forgetting. Our own galaxy is in motion. The Sun itself orbits the center of the Milky Way, carrying Earth and all its stories through space. In 250 million years, it will have completed a single galactic year, a slow, spiraling path through time. The stars we see at night will not always be there. Constellations will dissolve. Familiar patterns will stretch, tilt, vanish. Even the sky forgets. But like galaxies, we leave behind traces. Photographs, equations, maps of starlight, poetry written in wonder. Each observation we make is a way of saying, I see you, I remember you, I will carry your shape a little further. In that act, we become part of the cosmic story, not as distant spectators, but as gentle archivists of the sky's changing face. One day, far in the future, galaxies will be so far apart that their light may never reach each other. The universe will expand until the space between stars becomes vast and cold. And still, the stars will shine. Still, gravity will whisper. Still, somewhere, someone may remember, or maybe they won't. Maybe memory itself will fade into silence, but that too is part of the sleep. There is no sadness here, only stillness, only the rhythm of things moving forward even as they drift apart. Just as autumn leaves fall not in grief but in grace, so too do galaxies release their past. They become what they need to be next. New shapes, new silences, new songs written in stars that have never met before. And so the universe dreams. It turns, it expands, it evolves. It forgets, but in forgetting it makes room for the new. It does not mourn what was, it breathes it in and lets it go. And in that breath we find peace. Because we too forget, we too change. And in the great galactic sleep there is space for all things to shine, to fade, to be remembered, and to be quietly, beautifully forgotten.